Despite the famine, the massive death toll and the humanitarian crisis, the US remains committed to supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza. The Biden administration has provided a continuous supply of weapons, bombs, ammo, and they've even publicly claimed Israel is abiding by US and by international humanitarian law, even as internally they're told otherwise. But as President Biden doubles down in his commitment to Israel and by extension to Benjamin Netanyahu, the uncommitted vote has made waves in primary elections being held across the United States. Voters in crucial states like Michigan, Minnesota, and Arizona, many of whom are Muslim or Arab Americans, have sent a strong message to Joe Biden and the Democrats. We won't vote for you unless you change course on Gaza. But this November, another reality might set in for Muslim voters, and that's the strong possibility that Joe Biden might lose to Donald Trump. And Trump isn't just an Islamophobe. He's running an openly fascist, anti-democratic campaign. He's quoting Adolf Hitler. He's promising to deport pro-Palestinian foreign students from America. Israel's most right-wing ministers are counting down the days to a Trump presidency. So, where should the Muslim vote, if there is such a thing, go? What do Muslim American, Arab American, pro-Palestinian voters do? Is this about voting for the lesser of two evils? Who better to debate this with than two prominent Muslim elected Democrats who take very different views on this? Keith Ellison is the Attorney General for Minnesota and was America's first Muslim congressman. Abdullah Hammoud is the first Muslim mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, the first Arab American majority city in the United States, and he's also a former state rep, and they join me now. Abdullah Hammoud, Keith Ellison, thank you both for joining me on Mehdi Unfiltered today. Abdullah, let me start with you. You have been super critical of the Biden administration. You were a strong supporter of the uncommitted vote in Michigan, which got nearly 19% of the Democratic primary vote there, more than 45,000 votes. But what do you say to people in your party who say ultimately that's all a distraction? When push comes to shove, everyone, including Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, has to vote for Biden in the general election?
I say that it's my duty as the elected for the region, but also as a member of this nation to hold my elected official accountable. And that's exactly what we did with the uncommitted vote. It was trying to rally the vote to demonstrate that what's happening in Gaza is unacceptable and that what our president has been doing and the decision making that he has taken upon along with his administration is absolutely unacceptable and making all of us complicit with this genocide. We have to end the endless, unlimited checks to Benjamin Netanyahu in the most right-wing government in Israel's history. We have to call for a permanent ceasefire. We have to have the backbone to hold those who commit war crimes accountable. And President Biden has demonstrated that he's not able to do this at this point in time. And so we want to clearly send the message that he must move along with the center of the party prior to coming to November, because none of us want to see Trump elected to the presidency, as that can unravel democracy altogether.
But as of today, Abdullah, just to be clear, as of today, are you voting for Joe Biden?
I have not pledged my vote to any candidate. I think no candidate has earned my vote, and I think it's incumbent upon the candidate seeking the highest office in this world to earn the votes of the constituents he seeks to serve.
Keith Ellison, as someone who is also a Muslim American elected, you served in Congress. You were the first Muslim elected to the United States Congress. You're now an AG. Here is the mayor of a town filled with Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, saying Biden hasn't earned his vote. And Abdullah's a Democrat too. What do you say to Abdullah?
I got no quarrel with anything Abdullah said. Everything he said is, I think, perfectly defensible. And in fact, I think that the uncommitted position might have the effect of moving the Biden administration in the right direction, which we all hope he'll arrive at, which is a sovereign state for Palestinian people in Palestine, permanent ceasefire, humanitarian aid, and everything that goes along with recognizing the humanity of the Palestinian people. I already know I'm going to vote for Biden, but I got to be honest and tell you that I have strong objections to the policy, but I also know that one of two people is going to be the president of the United States, and that's just reality. But I got no problem with the uncommitted folks who are trying to move the Biden administration in the right direction.
So we'll come back to the reality of the choice on the table in a moment. Just dealing with Gaza and what Abdullah raised, and you're saying you agree on the policies needing to change. What do you say, Keith, to a Muslim American, Arab American voter, young leftist who comes to you and says, but I can't vote for Joe Biden. He's been complicit in 33,000 deaths, 14,000 children's deaths. He continues to send weapons to Israel. Right now, he's supporting crackdowns on college campuses, demonizing the word intifada. How, Keith, can you expect me to vote for Joe Biden? What do you say to that young person, let's say?
So here's what I'd say to them. First of all, I'd acknowledge for them that this is an incredibly painful situation. I'd tell them that I have dear friends of mine who have lost literally hundreds of family members, that how they feel is perfectly understandable. But at the end of the day, one or two people is going to be the president. And look, electing Trump, for me, and I'm speaking for Keith Ellison right now, is unacceptable. And that Trump has said, finish the job. Trump is not about humanitarian assistance or a Palestinian state or a permanent ceasefire, and that unelecting Biden will not achieve the goal that we all have, which is permanent ceasefires, Palestinian state, humanitarian assistance, and much more. So that's what I would say. I'd say that, look, if you unelect Biden, it's not going to hurt Biden. Biden's going to live the life of a former president. But all the rest of us will see a lot of pain. We'll see the Supreme Court go further to the right. We'll see the person who was the author of the Muslim ban get elected, who promises to go further this time, and maybe we'll be able to do it with this court. We'll see the person who said that a Mexican-American judge couldn't be fair to him because he was a Mexican. We're going to see some tough things in our future if we see Trump. And I've heard a lot of friends of mine, dear friends who are Muslim, say, Keith, one day in Gaza is worse than 4 years under Trump. And I say, wait a minute, who says 4 years? This could be a long-term problem. So my thought is I'd rather have pressure Biden, demand that he make the changes, rather than have somebody who will never listen and maybe be much worse.
Abdullah, Keith now twice has said the reality is there's just two people on the ballot. It's the choices between Trump and Biden. There's no Cornel West option. I mean, he's running. We had him on the show recently, but he can't win. You accept that, right? The choice is between Trump and Biden. So if it's not Biden, it has to be Trump. Are you okay with that?
I understand the circumstances of electoral politics, but what I will not accept is this idea that fear-mongering is what's supposed to drive, especially young people and Democrats, to the ballot, and having to plug your nose and vote for Biden just because Trump is on the other side of the ticket. I think what we need to highlight is the fact that what's happening in Gaza cannot get any worse. I keep hearing this, and as the mayor for the city of Dearborn, what I tell you is when my resident comes to our council chambers and says, I have lost 80 family members, I don't think it's prudent upon this president or any part of his campaign to come out and say, well, it would be worse under Trump. There's nothing worse than 80% of all civilian infrastructure decimated, 50% of all deaths are innocent children, and 100% of a population is displaced. And this idea that somehow President Biden has been advocating for a ceasefire or unfettered humanitarian access, he has the ability to pick up the phone today, I promptly believe, and end this war altogether. He can close the pipeline to all the bombs and weapons manufacturers supplies to the IDF, to Benjamin Netanyahu, but he refused to do so. And so I think it's wholly unacceptable. People want to be inspired to come out to the ballot. Keith Ellison, I'm somebody who was a surrogate for you when you ran for DNC chair. And I was inspired to go state to state and advocate for my brother Keith Ellison to become to the DNC chair because he believes in grassroots activism. And him and I have the same core set of beliefs that you want to unite the Democratic Party. And at the core of the Democratic Party are young people, are brown and black people, are Muslim Americans, Arab Americans. And right now, looking at college campuses across the country, it seems that Biden has forgotten that when he is more in alignment with Greg Abbott and Benjamin Netanyahu, we have serious questions that we have to ask this party.
Keith, a lot of people say to me, a lot of Muslims say to me, and I'm sure they've said this to you, and I'm interested in your answer, that it's not about Trump versus Biden. It's about teaching the Democratic Party a lesson. If we don't do something now, the Democrats will take us for granted, and we have the ability to influence the election in places like Michigan and Georgia. So let's show them that, and then they'll wake up in November and say, we messed up. We should have listened to the Muslim and Arab American votes. What do you say to that argument?
I'm not sure that the message that people are trying to send will ever arrive at the intended destination. what I will say is that between now and November, there is the opportunity to put the pressure on. This is how change happens. Protest is a long tradition in the United States. I mean, in the 60s, young people protested the Vietnam War. When I was in college at Wayne State, a few miles from where Abdullah is the mayor, we were protesting apartheid, South Africa. Students have gotten out there against, climate change. And now students all over this country are protesting on an issue for which they have a very firm conviction. What I will say is keep on protesting, moving the ball, doing the best you can, but don't foreclose the possibility that you're going to vote for the best option for America, as bad as it might be. Again, I'm not fear-mongering. I'm just saying.
Keith, are you saying lesser of two evils? Because people get very upset with that phrase these days.
Yeah, but let me just tell you this. I know people don't want to vote for lesser of two evils. I don't want to vote for lesser of two evils. But in life, that is the choice we often are stuck with. I'm sorry. I wish it were different. But in this situation, we have what we have in front of us, and we're going to have to make a choice. And sitting on the sideline and saying, I can't vote for either one of them, quite frankly, will benefit the one who is the most damaging. So I'm not fear-mongering. Let me just say, I'm not fear-mongering. I'm just saying that 1 + 1 = 2. This is the situation in front of us. None of us want it to be the situation. And I hope that young people and others, this is not only young people, but it's a lot of young people, will continue to press, continue to demand, but at the end of the day, we'll understand that we can't have Trump back.
Abdullah, in 2020, you voted for Joe Biden. You saw the threat from Trump. You voted for, I'm sure, what you thought at the time was the lesser of two evils. Joe Biden had already presided over the Iraq War. A lot of Bernie folks were unhappy with him for multiple reasons on the domestic front. He didn't hide his Zionist politics, his loyal support for Israel. And you voted for him in 2020 to stop Trump. You made the choice then on lesser of two evils, right?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously was a big Bernie Sanders supporter in 16 and in 20. Obviously voted for the Democratic candidate both times. But for me, when you look at what's happening in Gaza, this is unprecedented. You can't look at this genocide and say that there has been precedent for this level of genocide. Joe Biden ran on the idea of bringing decency back to the White House. He ran on the idea of leading with humanity, leading with morality. And I happen to believe, as a member of the greatest country in the world, that this proposition come November, unfortunately, is unsatisfactory. I would like to think that we're not voting, that we don't have a choice between the lesser of two evils, and rather would have to be the fact, would rather like to aspire to come out.
Let me drill down here. Keith says 1 + 1 = 2. Are you disagreeing with him there?
I think I am disagreeing, because you have to look at the facts. When I have a resident who has lost loved ones, I have a resident who both of his grandmothers had to be pulled out from under the rubble of 2 residential towers that were decimated by IDF fighter jet. You cannot look to that individual and say, while I send my condolences for the loss of your grandmothers, you need to vote for Biden because it would have been worse under Trump. I don't think that is the reality.
What about the argument?
There's a subsect of this population which will not vote for Biden.
Agreed.
We have to accept that.
Agreed.
We will not vote for Biden.
And I would never ask someone who lost 2 grandparents in this conflict to vote for Biden. Of course, there's a human dimension here, politics aside. Correct. I'm just wondering, to you as a leader, as someone who is a Democrat, what about the argument that not just it would have been worse under Trump, but what's coming? Like, why would you want to create a worse life for your family, for your kids? I'm assuming you believe Trump would be worse for America than Biden.
I absolutely do not want to see a Trump presidency happen again in my lifetime. But what I am doing as a leader is utilizing all the tools at my disposal to hold this current president accountable. And so while we keep hyper-focusing, obviously, on the November election, I'm looking at today and tomorrow. What can I do so that when I wake up tomorrow and I look at the kill count of how many more individuals have been killed in Gaza, that at someday it actually ceases? And to Brother Keith's point, that we finally find a way to help establish a just Palestinian state. So that's the pressure that I am trying to surmount, alongside this anti-war, pro-peace, pro-justice movement that we see sprawling across the country from coast to coast.
But if you wake up the morning after the election, Abdullah, and Donald Trump is president, and you and friends of yours have not voted to stop that, you won't have any regrets. You won't think, maybe we shouldn't have done this. You'll say, I stand by my decision. I'm fine with this.
You know, I have never run for office, and I would love to hear Keith Ellison's perspective as well, where I said, if I am not elected office, I blame you, the voters. The Arab American community, the Muslim American community, we're not on the ballot come November.
Don't get me wrong.
It's incumbent upon the candidate. I have to push back on this. It's incumbent upon the candidate to
You can't push back on something I didn't say. I didn't say if you're Biden. Biden, sure, it's his fault. No one's asking you to sympathize with Joe Biden for losing. I'm saying you as a citizen, as someone who has to live in America the morning after the election, you won't have any kind of, maybe we got this wrong. What are we going to do now? We're screwed.
I absolutely believe as a nation, if Trump is reelected president, we have to self-reflect and ask ourselves what happened that we ended up back in this moment. I still remember that the first time Trump was reelected, driving in my car, listening to the radio, we still did that, and they announced Trump winning the election, and I literally pulled over my vehicle, and I could not believe it. I think if that happens again, the Democratic Party has to have a deep self-reflection on what went wrong and how did they allow this to happen.
Keith, let me ask you this before we run out of time.
Sure.
How much does the argument, do you think, work with Muslims right now, Arab Americans who are very understandably upset about Gaza? But how much is the argument that, okay, Trump won't not necessarily be better or worse on Gaza, although personally I think he'll be worse on Gaza, but also he'll be worse on every other issue, democracy, climate change, healthcare, all the issues we care about. Does that work in your experience?
Well, see, here's the thing. As I said, and as Abdullah has said, both of us know people who have paid more than the ultimate price. And so my heart is with them. I've been to Gaza myself, protested, the blockade of Gaza since 2006. I've been going back and forth to Gaza. So I saw it when it was bad. And Abdullah's right. I didn't think it'd get worse. But I have to say it can get worse in the West Bank. It can get worse with the war with Iran. It can get worse with the war with Lebanon. I mean, I do think things can get worse, and I think under Trump that they will, but I'm not going to insult the memory of the over 34,000 people dead. And let's not just only talk about the dead. Let's talk about the people who don't have arms, don't have legs, are blind, people who've lost everyone in their family. The horror is incalculable. But we have the future, and in the future, we have simply got to do better, and that means activism. I will say that I hope the universities, and I urge these universities not to overreact.
Yes.
Protesting on college campuses is a normal thing, and there should not be an overreaction. Students are going to protest. I protested and got arrested on Wayne State's campus over apartheid, and I'll just say that, look, young people have a right to make themselves clear. And so I will say that I'm going to sit up and say what I'm going to do. I think what I'm doing is the right thing, but there's no way I can tell Abdullah that he's wrong and that he shouldn't be doing what he's doing. I'm hoping that his plan works and that it changes the Biden administration's trajectory on this issue. In the meantime, I'm glad that you're airing this issue and getting some real discussion going, because I think it's very much needed.
Well, let me say, as three Muslims have a discussion about the future of America, your sentiment, Keith, that Joe Biden listens, all I have to say is one word that Biden himself uses: inshallah. Abdullah Hammoud, Keith Ellison, thank you so much, both of you, for taking time out for this important discussion. Appreciate you both.
Salam to all you guys. All right, we'll see you soon, Abdullah.
Thank you.